Hey, Jesus loves you, and today is chapter 5 of Diaries of a Holy Night, the in-between curly hair. The Simps of the village put on a makeshift party for multiple different reasons. First, for their protection from those hideous beings. Second, it gave them a chance to use the remaining parts of the house for a bonfire. And third, for the honor of having Aaron, the chief Simp's son, among them. This was almost as big of a miracle since the forest Simps rarely visit the river Simps due to social standards. Yay, social standards. The Simps set fire to the remnants of the bar and danced around it in their traditional dances, which mostly consisted of dogs chasing each other's tails as fast as they could, eventually passing out from the dizziness. Lavish wooden human toilets were placed in front of the teens by the town's Simps, one to eat from and the other to drink from. That sounds nasty. Simp cooks spilled what appeared to be vomit into the food toilet, and the other had something like milk in it. Each Simp dived in, ravenously devouring the food, but the teens were doubtful. I would be. The food smelled like Christmas, would suddenly happen on their tongues if they would just taste it. But the visual of the vomit-soaked skunk meat overpowered the smell. Justin eventually summoned up the courage to take a bite. Surprisingly, the food tasted like hash brown covered steak in a delicious sauce. This was yet another pleasant surprise, and, after much harassment, Mike joined in. After the festivities, Aaron asked Justin to recount what he had witnessed on the beach that day to the town. The crowd waited with bated breath as he began, but horror quickly spread throughout as Justin described the enemy invasion. Before long, Aaron had to take over to pacify them. He urged everyone that could to pick up their weapons and meet the enemy in the woods for the freedom of the whole forest. The river tribe unanimously left at once. They grabbed whatever weapons were available and ventured into the woods the same way the guard had gone. The elderly marched the children to their many boats, seeking safety on the river. After an hour passed, only a handful remained, including, by far, the weirdest of Simps. The group continued along to a long wooden port just outside of the town, recently vacated of most boats. It wasn't a grand commercial port, but it sufficed for the many hundreds of wooden vessels that were usually tied to it. Approaching the docks, they saw many beautiful ships ranging from industrial fishing types to very personal canoes. The smallest of which was just an old human bathtub with a paper flag. A medium-sized tugboat immersed in green vines, as if it were a moving jungle, waited at the far end of the dock. It seemed as if it could barely hold itself up, let alone a crew. And as they walked past the big ships and the fancy ships, that abomination was staring them dead in the eyeballs. An old, one-eyed Simp came hobbling off the boat, dressed like a pirate, with a bandana, dog-bone-shaped eye patch, heavily stained muscle shirt, and a kilt. This Simp was missing his right leg below the knee, but instead of the usual peg leg a pirate would have, he leaned on a crutch which was just a rusty human machine gun big enough to do the job. Mike spotted a small amount of crusted food caught in his beard and detected a rather foul hint of body odor wafting off of him. The boys narrowed their vision on the age-battered Simp. Their chests began to glow brightly again, instinctively. Something quite surprising happened next. Aaron embraced the misplaced Simp into a hug. Randall, my dearest friend, it has been too long, Aaron spoke with a type of regal withholding. How have the waves been treating you? The boy's light relented ever softer, but not entirely, since they didn't trust this Randall fellow. Justin kept his hands near his sword just in case the chief's son had temporarily gone insane. Randall spoke very soft, as if the information he was conveying was incredibly confidential.
Not too well, Aaron. My partners have been running into Devma warships everywhere. They've been sucked multiple times, and my brother's songs have ended.
Aaron grabbed Randall even harder into his hug, unleashing a quick torrent of puppyish sobs before Aaron reassured him.
I am sorry for your losses, but we have need of your help. We are heading to see my dad, Chief Thomas, in Simperon capital city. The Devma have invaded.
Invaded? Randall questioned in disarray. Where? Justin broke into the conversation. How does this guy know your dad? Aaron answered, stepping out of the hug to look more clearly at Justin.
This is Randall, my oldest and most trusted friend. He is of a forgotten royal house, but now belongs to the Guild of Pirates.
Pirates? Mike said. This is the first I've heard of them. Are they dangerous?
The in-between world is covered in oceans, Aaron said. Randall is of the best river runners in the guild, but not so good on the oceans. They have the world's largest navy with ports on every island in the world, even Imperon. Pirates are only dangerous to greedy human council.
Randall turned to climb back on the boat, but was having a hard time. Aaron nodded at Justin to help, much to the teen's disappointment. With a sense of foreboding, Justin lifted Randall into the boat, catching a whole mouthful of stinky sip beard. Aaron moved onto the deck with his worry roars after laughing to himself. Randall handed a map of what appeared to be a bird to Aaron on the deck of the ship. Vines wrapped around every piece of the boat, even the floorboards, causing a sappy, sticky feel when walking on it. Ew. All of the flowers growing on board gave the ship a faintly rose-like smell, which masked the hint of wet simp. The warriors gathered around him along with the boys as he pointed at their current location at the simp port town along the great river and began to speak.
Many millions of our people's songs will end if we do not reach my father in Simperon City. We couldn't use the bridge, otherwise the Devma could have set up an ambush and figure out my plan, which is to head up the North River to Fandorian City and recruit the help of the protector of Simperon, the Holy Knight Fandorian. The warriors erupted into arguments with him again. They objected to making such sudden decisions, opting instead to dock for the night and think things through. Aaron argued that they cared more about speed at the bridge, so why the change now? They became very bitter with each other, but submitted to Aaron's command. A fire was lit on the furthest edge of the bow of the ship where the warriors encircled it, saying that they were freezing. Aaron knew the fire was a safety hazard, surrounded by thick vines, but was not about to be dragged into another battle over something so trivial. On the water, Randall really was something special. He was like an aquatic scientist, able to predict the currents coming and going as if he was the one telling them to move. This set the mood of the once anxious passengers back to normal. But Justin wasn't having a good time over the side of the ship due to him pulling out an unappetizing simp hair from his mouth. During the voyage, a silence came over the ship. It was so deep that each individual splash and far-off owl cry could be clearly heard. The warriors sat around their fire making bitter disputes. This bothered Mike so much that he sought out Aaron to answer some questions he had been having. The chief simp's son was in the captain's nest speaking in a hushed tone with Randall. Mike had to duck to get in, obviously not a ship meant for humans taller than 5 years of age. One lamp hung directly over the map.
Along the walls were small wooden shelves with all sorts of crutches, each from a different island at the island's name, as the island's name were written below them. Excuse me, Aaron, but I have been troubled with a few questions about your servicemen. Why were your warriors incredulous about going to Fandorian City? Is it unsafe? Mike asked. Aaron winked at Randall and returned to Mike with a smile.
Fandorian City would probably be the safest place on our island.
Then what's the problem? Mike asked. They were adamantly opposed to your decision.
Oh, nothing that should affect the mood of a human of your ability.
As Aaron was still speaking, the boat came to a sudden, abrupt stop, shaking its passengers to their knees. A huge crack ripped the floorboards apart. Water began to pour into the captain's nest. The three ran out onto the deck to find their boat had slammed into the side of a large black ship. It had no sails and no cannons. Instead, it was propelled by hundreds of giant oars. The ship was filled to the brim with Devma that glared at them as if they expected to find them right where they did. Aaron growled as he drew his sword and struck down the closest of his 4 warriors standing around the fire. This caused the others to draw their weapons at him. In a knee-jerk reaction, Mike moved to restrain Aaron, thinking he had lost his mind. Before he could get to the chief's son, Randall stopped him and pointed his good arm in the direction of the dead warrior. The simp body melted into dark, oily ash inside of a simpskin costume, much like the men at the bar. Then it hit him. The reason why the Simps were so disturbed that Aaron didn't choose the bridge. The reason the hooded man looked to them for help. The reason they grumbled when they mentioned moving to the safest city on the island. And the fire they started was guiding the enemy ship right to them. It was because they weren't really Simps at all, but Devma sent to kill the chief's son. Before Mike could react, a Devma warrior had leapt from the ship and was above his head with a scythe aimed at his throat. Like a razor, Justin cut through the monster with his borrowed blade. His light blazed brighter than a wildfire as the teen stopped just long enough to smile widely at Mike. Justin then hopped onto the enemy ship and tore through the monsters, running for their lives away from him. His sword met no defense, with his every swing turning those beasts to ash. His light poured through the ship's oar holes as he fought down into its heart, making it have the appearance of an overlarge jack-o'-lantern. In the confusion, Randall yanked his machine gun leg off and unleashed a hail of bullets at the Devma. This surprised everybody because it was such an old weapon that had been used on the water for such a long time that no one thought it was a functioning weapon. Aaron jumped back behind a barking Randall, pouring his heart into the fight, keeping more than a few of those Devma distracted. Aaron gave Mike we'll be here. You go there to help out Justin. Don't worry about us. Mike nodded and jumped on board the ship. On deck, he noticed a lot of black ash where the bodies of Devma once existed, but no Justin. He heard the sound of fighting from far inside the ship. Mike found an open doorway that led to a hole with a ladder leading down. He descended the ladder into a dark hallway where the only light visible was from the fire in his chest, which he had activated again completely unconsciously. The light was peaceful enough to give him the same comforting feeling of wearing a comfy sweatshirt. But deeper still was his feeling of fear. The entirety of the ship was made of the same black metal, which eerily made him feel like he was walking through a shadow. He moved down another ladder until he saw a new stream of dark sand leading off into an open pit in the heart of the vessel. Mike hurried into the expanse and spotted a blazing fire coming from the far side of the boat. It was Justin, and he was moving around like a blur, slashing at something, making it seem like he was in trouble. That is when he saw what he was fighting. It was a terrifyingly massive Devma. Mike crouched down along the wall to take in the enormity of the monster. He supposed that this was the captain of the ship due to its sheer size of over 20 feet tall. It wore a captain's hat on its head that looked like it was nailed into its head to stay in place. Justin's sword was doing anything but killing the monster as he repeatedly sliced it. Unaffected by the outcome, Justin smiled brilliantly, enjoying every second of the fight. Unbeknownst to him, the beast was growing angry. Frightened beyond belief, Mike readied himself to hopefully catch the element of surprise and slash the giant with his sword. But in the moment he found he was without one. He didn't even think about grabbing one off of the boat. He recalled how he had received that shining sword during the fight in the trading company that he used to kill the Hooded Man. It seemed to just have been in his hands to protect his friend when he needed it the most, as if he could call on it at will. As the battle continued to rage, Justin was growing tired and the beast was taking the upper hand. It landed a volley of powerful punches to his face, splattering blood out of his nose and sending him crashing hard against the side of the ship. Mike, worried for his companion's life, tried everything he could to make a sword appear, but it wasn't working. "Speak it into existence." A voice spoke from the Jesus sitting on the throne in his chest. "Your words are power, my child." The voice made his light explode in brilliance, covering every inch of the inside of the ship. It was so fierce that the beast fell over in terror. Now, aware of a second opponent, the lumbering Devma dashed its giant body toward the red-haired teen with murderous intent. It drew back its incredible arm and slammed them directly into the light with such massive power that it cracked the floorboards from the force. The light did not disappear. Mike appeared out of it, holding a cross-shaped sword in front of his face, blocking the giant's attack. The boy let loose a shout with such viciousness it horrified the monster in front of it. He yelled, "Sword!" and the boat shuddered. Nose bloodied, face bruised, and almost unconscious, Justin gathered courage from Mike's light. He looked up to behold the sword that his frenemy wielded in awe. He wouldn't admit it, but was jealous at how easily Mike was fending off the enemy that had just tossed him aside like trash. In his desperation, he quickly sent out a prayer to God for a sword like the one Mike has, just bigger. As soon as he spoke the word sword, a very small, cross-shaped sword of light appeared in his hand. Justin hopped up and squealed out with victorious glee as his light exploded from his chest, burrowing into every crevice of the ship. Mike looked over at Justin, smiling in a patronizing way. The giant took the opportunity to slam its fists into Mike again, which the boy stopped easily. The angry teen looked at his opponent with disgust. The beast answered that with fear. Mike punched the monster hard in the stomach, causing it to spit out all of the air in its lungs. He lifted the sword above his head and spoke. You don't scare me anymore." The red-haired teen's face became very peaceful as he pulled his sword down on the creature. Light shot through his sword, piercing through the huge Devma's chest, blowing it to ash. The light changed into a physical energy beam that lashed apart the demon and beyond it, blasting a hole through the side of the ship. Water poured in as the teens reunited. They climbed up to the deck to find that the rest of the Devma sailors had captured Aaron, while Randall was just surrounded but crutchless. I guess that stink was good for something. Justin started to smile, moving forward to attack. But noticing that the Devma holding Aaron in place also had a scythe to his throat, Mike stopped him. The demons growled for the teens to lose their weapons, which the boys begrudgingly complied to. The weapons were made from nowhere, so to nowhere they returned. A voice called out in the black distance, "Don't let them win! Hold up your sword and yell, 'Holy Cross!'" This shocked the Devma on deck, enough for Aaron to break free of his captor with a well-placed elbow and pull the unsecured Randall overboard. Mike saw Aaron wink at him as he jumped into the water, like he could have done this at any time, which was nonsense. Mike moved quickly, spoke his sword back into existence, aimed it in the direction of the remaining Devma, and screamed, "Holy Cross!" A light energy shot out from the sword again, this time taking the form of a 50-foot shining cross that crushed both the black ship and all the Devma around into dust. As the wreckage sunk, the boys jumped off the side of the vessel, hoping to at least get a good distance into the water. Instead, they flew into the woods, landing a few yards off the beach almost 500 feet away. They were also surprised to see that not far from them was Randall and Aaron dog paddling as fast as they could. After the teens dusted themselves off, they looked at each other with growing excitement. They possessed a power that no darkness could repel. It could crush boats, defeat demons, and was at their disposal. Justin checked his face for any injuries, but there weren't any. Even the blood had disappeared from his nose. "You two are amazing," Aaron said as he and Randall shook the water out of their furs standing on the sandy shores of the North River. "You had me so convinced you were just lost humans in our woods. But behold, I once again am blessed to find myself in the company of holy knights." "Are either of you injured?" Mike asked as he noticed Aaron limping. "That one's missing a leg," Justin said, pointing at Randall. Mike rolled his eyes. "You are holy knights," Aaron continued. "You could fix me in a second with the light of God living inside of you." Justin shrugged his shoulders. "We aren't holy knights. Just Christians. I mean, we all have this power, but that's it." "Look at the ability you possess just being Christians," Aaron raved. "The darkness flees from you. You carry weapons of pure light. That means you are holy knights to us." "I'll be the judge of that," the same mysterious voice that called from earlier spoke from behind them in the darkness. A rustle arose from some bushes to the north. Even amidst their light, it was still hard to make out any kind of movement. Within a moment, they were surrounded. A group of humans wearing glowing medieval knight's armor and wielding cross-shaped longswords made of a bright burning steel, which Mike deduced to be the same metal as the simp weapons, positioned around them in a semicircle. Their leader made his way forward. A great light burned brightly in his chest. Their leader was very impressive. He bore a large HK imprinted on his left breast. His sword was the largest of the knights surrounding him, and his face seemed to be not many years older than the boys were. He stood a foot taller than Mike and was of African descent. He spoke with a French accent. He looked around the group with a smile and grabbed a novelty tail that was hanging from his belt at Aaron. Pointing over at Mike, he asked, "Aaron, great chief's son, who is this curly-headed boy?" I know I'm not doing a French accent. I'm sorry, guys. Aaron replied, "I am surprised you are unaware of other holy knights on your island. I have met so few of you outside of the capital since the last time Deathmesh attacked." "Who is this guy, Aaron?" Justin pointed up through the group at the lead warrior. "Interesting question, Aaron," the man responded. "But how is it that a couple of children possessing Christ's light end up in the middle of Simperon Island? Which I protect without my foreknowledge. Furthermore, how can the curly-headed child use a knight's attack without truly being one? This is much to my amazement, because only those trained by the angels have the ability, as after I merely suggested it on a Holy Spirit hunch, and you were able to use it. How were you capable of surrounding us? Mike asked. Are you a threat? The leader looked to the soldiers with a smirk, causing them to snicker. We were hiding our lights to get the drop on the enemy ship we saw coming. When we saw your light, we held our position on the beach in case your situation got worse, which, due to the Holy Spirit's advice, it did not. Aaron walked over to the leader and said,
This is Fendorian, the Holy Knight Protector of Ciparon. He is guardian of the free islands of the In-Between from the threat of the Death Mesh, and a dear friend of my father. Why? Who did you think he was?
End of chapter 5.